Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics and Greg Terry Experience co-production here. That sounds very official. It's been a long time since we've been together, Greg, and that we've done something like this. I've missed you, man. What have you been up to?
The same thing you've been up to, standing with Ukraine, doing our best to raise awareness and help, and drinking as much good quality tea as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Right now, I do need some education from our wonderful UK friends. So what I've done is, first in the cup here, I put, and by the way, look at this cup here, man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's some merch.
Oh, I don't have any merch. My buddy made it for me, but dude, it is nice. Awesome. That's beautiful. So what I did, and I don't know if this is right, I'm not a connoisseur, but a little bit of cream and then the hot water on top of it and then the tea bag. Is that proper?
Well, so we wouldn't use cream. We'd use milk. Cream would be for coffee. So I don't know if you mean like coffee cream, like that powder stuff. But
no. I'm talking milk.
Yeah, so we put, if you're doing it properly, like if you're like with the Queen or King now,
yes,
you put milk in and then you put a tea bag and hot water in, and you do it that way. I do it just put the tea bag in, put hot water in, and then mash the tea bag till you've got a good consistency, and then whack the milk in, and then jobs are good.
But I did do it proper. Milk.
You are more English than I am, so who knew?
Well, you know, spending all the time together with you on the front, you really converted me there, so thank you.
I would like to say you nearly converted me, but we know that's not true.
Well, we converted. We were working hard to convert each other, and we did pretty good. So, but I do want to say this: all you guys that are on my channel tonight, we're co-streaming. This worked out perfectly. Typically, my live streams Monday through Friday are 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I have an appointment tonight, so I messaged Johnny this morning. I said, "Hey, bud, it's time for a co." And let's take a deep dive. He said, let's take a deep dive on the map. And then we worked out the timing, and this is perfect. So a couple of hours early, but thank you, JP.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And it's always good to have someone to bounce these ideas off. Look, we're going to go through the map. I was thinking about this being quite quick, a quick stream tonight, because my brain is frazzled from doing too much content, to be perfectly honest. I was thinking we'll whiz through this. And then Greg and I got talking in the green room. I was like, oh, that's an interesting topic. Oh, that's an interesting topic. Oh, yeah. So you can bet this is not going to be quite as quick as, you know me, guys. I'm not the quickest when it comes to recordings.
Anyway, this tea bot, and I know King Dog, you're in there on the patch. I only do patches when I'm solo. Tonight I'm with Johnny, so patch will be there tomorrow.
You can do whatever you like, my man.
I know, thank you, but I try to save the patch of the night and segment and talk about the patch and all that. So patches will be here tomorrow. On Free Flag Friday, we will be doing that again for all of you in here. For those of you watching on, and we'll remind you at the end of the stream, ATP Geopolitics with Johnny tomorrow night. Signed battle flag from the front from Fish artwork. You just have to be present to win. Put your name in the raffle. I spin the wheel at the end of the hour and a half stream, and somebody gets it shipped to them.
I have one of those as well with some artwork. So I would like to do a similar thing to you there, Greg. At some point, do a raffle for this, for this to go to a.
Was that sent to you from a viewer?
That was sent by King Raccoon. Thank you, King Raccoon.
Okay, so King Raccoon. You now have confirmation. He just held it up for you. So thank you, King Raccoon, for helping.
Yeah, legend. So I don't know when we'll do this one at some point.
Awesome.
Cool beans. Okay, well, look, we'll go to the front line. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please, pause the video if you're watching this not live, or you can pause the video right now, and then you can check out what the key is to the map. And remember that this map shows you the defensive lines. It's really important to remember here. So we have a synthesis of 3 mappers, the yellow being deep state maps, which are pro-Ukrainian, the blue being Andrew Perpetua, which I see him as neutral, and Suryat Maps is a pro-Russian mapper. And somewhere, so for example, up near Sinkivka here, near the Kupiansk front line, we have three very different interpretations of the data. This is where the Russians control. Now, remember, in this case, to the south of here, there will be grey zone. So it's not like as soon as that red line, as soon as you cross that red line going south, there's going to be a Ukrainian trench. So there will be a grey zone, and then somewhere back here, the Ukrainians will be fighting. JR, who essentially does my mapping at the moment, he has added a feature today, which if we do want to look at the grey zone, we can bring out Andrew Perpetua's grey zone. So this is the interpretation of the grey zone according to Andrew Perpetua, the second blue line. That would mean that the Ukrainians are behind here, and actually the difference between him and Suryat Maps is Suryat Maps believes that the Russians control Ukrainian controlled land. So actually, I'm not going to show that today. I'll talk about that more on a different day, but we do have the option to show you some grey zone now, which is, I think, really useful.
It's very good. I'll tell you this, Deep State is behind on their mapping on Krasnohorivka. Absolutely. They're not even close. So it's good that you use multiple sources like you do with Perpetua, Syriac, and Deep State. They're not even close to confirmed. Maybe they took the Easter holiday. I don't know, but they're way off on Krasnohorivka, just Deep State. But I need to grab this comment really quick. You don't have to put it up, but somebody asked, are Ukrainian soldiers paid well? Let me grab Daughter of Texas. I'm hearing soldiers are not getting paid enough. Is this true? Yes. No. Ukrainian soldiers are paid enough. In fact, they're paid quite handsomely, especially if they're on the zero line. And there were issues 6-9 months ago of payments coming due to internal systems. That's all solved. The soldiers are paid, but out of their salaries, they are having to pay for their fuel. They're having to pay for other supplies, gear they want sometimes that's not provided enough, and at the same time, try to take care of their families back home. So the budget is tight, but yes, they are paid. It would be more helpful if the government, and this is where organizations like Weir's helping make up that deficit, make up that difference, so that they can help take care of their families. So
yeah, so when I was out in Ukraine with Greg and Zhenya and Pierre, we visited a house on the front line, which was a house that the Ukrainian unit, not on the front line, on the border, in the Sumy Oblast, so somewhere around here.
Hey,
we
Johnny,
visited. The
border of Sumi's the front line.
Yeah, but this is true. And also that house is now no longer, they're not in that house. They've had to move 10 kilometers back.
No, they had to move 10 kilometers back because it was too intensive on the shelling and the glide bombs. Correct.
And the glide bombs. But when we were there, what was interesting is the house we visited that the unit was operating from was a house in a village that there must have been very few residents actually in. And the way I understand it is the unit commander was renting that house for his troops, which would be coming out of his own budget as well, rather than from his own pocket, or somehow I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but that's
you're accurate.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that is happening routinely up and down the front line, where rather than billeting in some random place, they'd actually say, look, I want to look after my soldiers. I want them to be in a good place to do the work they're doing. So we're going to rent effectively an abandoned house, but we're not just going to occupy it because this is our country. We don't want to do, the wrong thing by ourselves. And I'm going to rent that house for my boys, and we use that. So that's interesting.
Let me add some more on top of that to give you insight into Ukrainian character. That's correct. And so if you guys have heard out there propaganda, Ukraine goes in and kicks people out, none of that is true. They physically rent these homes where people have fled these frontline areas all along the border of Russia and along the 1,000-kilometer front line. They do not go in and kick people out. In fact, many, if not an overwhelming majority of the locals are very happy, to the point where if they're staying in the town, they will actually move in with a family member or a neighbor and make their house readily available to rent it to soldiers who not only take care of it, but many times they're even making it better, doing some renovations there, fixing the bathroom, whatever it may be, because they're trying to have as much of a normal life as possible while they're on the war front. But the issue is they are having to pay that rent. And I wish there was a better way for this to relieve. There's a lot of financial pressure on soldiers, especially back home.
And to be fair, there's a lot of financial pressure on the Ukrainian government. So, like, I'm sure in a perfect world, they'll be paying for nice accommodation for their soldiers. But of course, they're struggling to pay for weapons, right? So on the one hand, we can see both sides of the argument. It's really interesting that Commission, the strategic industries minister, has this week said that there is a $10 billion shortfall for equipment to be built inside Ukraine where there is industrial capacity. So he has stated that we can build $10 billion worth of equipment more than we're presently building, and the only reason we're not building it is because we don't have the money to do it. So this is how important the money coming in from other sources really is. So Ukraine,
if you layer on top of that, and I'm sure you've covered this, if not, I'm sure you will, creditors are going to be calling for their bills to be paid come August for Ukraine that has been delayed. Hopefully something changes before then, but
I've not reported that. Yeah,
that is on the horizon, where the creditors, where Ukraine has extended credit to help fund this war and fund their country. Many of those are calling for those payments beginning in August. So once again, more financial pressure. And then you get to the mobilization. And yes, guys, I am working on a deep dive on mobilization to explain everything, even the flow charts. What happens? You get the call, you go to this office, et cetera, et cetera. So we all have a clearer understanding of that. That will then affect the economy. Ukraine, it's war, and it's challenging, and this is why the world has to stand together and supply and help and help fight this battle with Ukraine.
Look, it's difficult enough running a country in peacetime. We know that with our own experience of politics of our country, and none of us are ever happy. We're never happy with what the government is doing. We're always moaning, and we're trying to vote out the government that's in, or at least half of us are, and whatever. And so therefore, it is a difficult challenge to run a big country. You now have a big country, geographically big country, with the amount of decent sized population, trying to run that country in wartime whilst trying to defend your borders and buy an insane amount of military equipment is just almost impossible, right? So,
are you ready for some pressure? So let's go with the peak of Ukraine's population way back in the 90s, 48 million.
Yeah.
And now we're probably 28 million. That's the number that all of my guys agree on, if not lower. But let's just go, we've lost 20 million people. Okay. Now you've been invaded, which is the further step of this war that's been rolling since 2014, which basically is unfolded because the world was silent with the annexation of Crimea and the separatist activity in the east. We just let it ride. Now here we are. So think about the pressure on Zelensky and Ukraine in general. A, you've had a lot of people leave. B, you are having people killed every day, whether it's a civilian or a soldier. C, right now, your energy infrastructure is in dire straits because of the continued attacks on those thermal power plants, on those hydroelectric plants. There's not one large major hydroelectric plant in Ukraine functioning at full capacity, and there are a large majority of those destroyed and not functioning at all. Then you put on that the propaganda of the pressure of the world screaming that Russia is pushing out that, okay, your nation is full of Nazis and Azov they're nothing but the second coming of the SS. And you have all these pressures coming on you, but you're still standing strong and you're still fighting. That is a testament to the character of Ukrainian people. And I think sometimes we lose the real pressure of this war. I mean, you nailed it perfectly. We're in our own little countries or large countries or small countries. And, we've got our own internal problems, and we have elections and, oh man, Johnny and Greg, hurry up. I need to go to the market. Okay. I've got to do this. I got to do that. Somebody gets elected. We want them out of office, et cetera, just like you called it, but no war. Okay. Now and nobody mass exiting your country. There's a lot of pressure. Ukraine doing a really good job, but not every person that wants to vote somebody out always has success. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah. I did. I was wondering. We'll
You
return
set
to
me
that.
up, partner.
We'll
You
return
set
to
me
that.
up.
We'll
I didn't
return to
miss
that.
it. I didn't miss it.
That was really good news from a bipartisan point of view, but we will return to that.
Oh no, the best part, Johnny, in local news here in the U.S., the best part was Trump was furious that she called for it.
And actually, so he should be. I would agree with Trump there, because it was like political suicide for the
He was
Republicans.
furious. Yes.
Interesting. Anyway, we'll go to look at the front line. Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. I listened to him give a talk outside
you are just
courthouse today, and it was utter drivel. I've never heard such nonsense. Anyway, so Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea, we can see that there has been no change again. We have had quite a bit of activity up near the Novoselivska area.
Yes.
Again, near Tabaivka, and just north of there at Kislivka and Kotelyrivka. So those places. Kotelyrivka, that exactly, something like that. And Novoselivska has sort of opened up a little bit towards Stelmakivka. So
it's the most stable point on the map.
What, the northeast in general?
Yeah, in general.
Yeah. It's quite incredible that Sinkivka, it was so active and has been so quiet now for probably 2 months. Well, and that is testament to the defensive.
They've done great. There's a lot of cover there. There's still a lot of forest there. There's lots of things that are in Ukraine's benefit. They can supply through Kupiansk well. I still will say, guys, at least pay attention up north of that. We will be hearing more about Kharkiv and Sumy regions with pressure, even if it's just an increase in shelling and bombing and never another invasion. But troops are gathering up there, not to the point where they could take anything major, but enough that it has to be paid attention to. And I'm just concerned that Sumy and Kharkiv being so close to the borders, because it's increasing nonstop. In fact, I can tell you tonight, Russia, January 1st to May 9th, 2023, fired 466 missiles and 425 shaheeds. Ukrainian data. January 1 to May 9, 23, 466 missiles, 425 shaheed. January 1 to May 9th, 2024, 800 missiles, 1,664 shaheeds. So at the minimum, they're going to continue to hit Sumy and Kharkiv. Because, Johnny, it's close to the border.
Yeah.
It's close.
And that's why, so actually it's worth just mentioning this. That's why Belgorod keeps getting hit by Ukrainian missiles that I've been saying have been brought down by air defenses, and that's why they're falling in Belgorod. The thing is that the Russians appear to be positioning, I would have thought, their surface-to-air missiles that are being used in their surface-to-surface mode, such as the S-300s, probably around Belgorod, and other forms of munitions that they send at Kharkiv. And so the Ukrainians try and hit them back, and then they get taken down by air defense and often land in Belgorod. I don't think the Ukrainians have the resources to be throwing missiles randomly at residential buildings in Belgorod. So this has happened with the Russians into Ukraine. So you do end up shooting down missiles into residential areas if you have genuine targets near those cities.
It's missiles and it's drones, and yes, they're shot down. There are also a lot of S-300 groupings down even closer to Kharkiv, because Kharkiv will be hit a lot of times, guys, before the air alarm goes off. I don't know if you guys remember, but I was at that burning factory right before I left Ukraine the last time. It was hit and demolished before the alarm ever went off, because they're so close. They don't even hit the air alarm yet. The other thing is, remember, there will always be collateral damage. If there is a warhead flying in the air, unless it is destroyed completely in the air and you get the big explosion like a movie, and then you get falling debris, if it's deflected, a wing is taken off the Shaheed, whatever, it still comes to the ground and hits. And Belgorod, guys, is a large city. So Ukrainian stuff flying over, Ukraine is not attacking compartments. But on the other side, I will tell you this, Russia will use that to their advantage to continue to build, I don't want to use the word coalition, but to build momentum that, hey, they're terrorists. They're hitting our buildings. It'll be the same story of the truth that is trying to be flipped, because is truly what Russia does. They target civilian targets. But they'll spin it. They're the masters of spin. But overall, for air defense, for air right now, we have to pay attention to Sumy and Kharkiv. Keep our eye on the fact that there are a lot of soldiers up there. 3 Chechen battalions are coming in. They're over about 150 kilometers from the border. And we can't sleep on this. This is what I talked about 3 or 4 nights ago, Johnny. I said, guys, don't sleep on this. We slept on 2022 because they kept pushing in, and they kept pushing in tanks and troops, and the world was going, they'll never invade. They'll never invade. And we all woke up or went to bed, and the news was breaking. Tanks are rolling and missiles are flying.
Yeah, the question I've been asking, though, is that if they are using them as a distraction technique, so you have 50,000 people up here, and that is used to distract Ukrainian resources along to the top of Ukraine. Is that a good use of 50,000 troops, or would they actually better be used literally on the front lines? Or is it the case that it's a distraction and they're actually training there, so they're actually doing something that's useful, but you might as well train here and distract Ukrainian forces to the front lines and train in Luhansk, where the Ukrainians are not going to be distracted. They're going to be there anyway.
Well, they've been able to take advantage of the lack of supply over the last 6 weeks, and that's obvious right now. Russia may lose a spot here, lose a spot there, lose a position here, but overall they are making some advancements on many places, so they can afford right now to play that chess game up there. If I had to guess, I think they will try to take Kharkiv. Just my guess.
Yeah, I disagree here, because it would just be insane. It would just be like, that's a massive, massive city, and you would need such a massive amount of resources to do that. You look at, not like I keep saying to my viewers, you look at Novomykhailivka, where they've lost 314 vehicles. That's visually confirmed, so potentially more than that. You lose 314 vehicles trying to take a town that is 4.5 kilometers wide by about 1.5 kilometers deep.
Okay, now where is that ruler at?
Up there, the top, that ruler there.
So you're in a slideshow. Oh, you're on Google Earth.
Yes.
I got it now. I got it. Never mind. I got it.
Yeah, you've got to open my map on Google Earth, not in Google Maps.
I messaged Johnny a few days ago. I said, hey, how are you measuring? I don't see it. And he goes, it's at the top. And I'm looking at the top, and I go, there's no ruler. Okay, he's in Google Earth. So, okay. Now,
so when you look at Novomykhailivka compared to this,
I understand. I understand. But my point being, that potentially ends the war. Because this,
fair enough.
Okay, listen to everybody that you respect, whether they're coming out of Ukraine. I mean, right out of Budanov's assistant 1 week ago said, this war will continue, but will ultimately end in negotiations. That was him. Okay. How can Russia push that negotiation and stop the massive loss of supply, as you rightfully say, and measure and count? It's by taking something large. They cannot take Odessa. I
totally agree.
They cannot take Odessa.
No chance.
No chance. But if they can get one city to fall and then push for negotiations, the world may say, okay, enough's enough. It's just my guess. Nobody, just a year from now, you can pull this YouTube video up and go, Greg, you were such an idiot. Fair enough. It's just
I don't know.
Guess.
Like, I just think that's suicidal. I would think maybe someone like Sumy would be far more achievable than Kharkiv, just because it's the second biggest city.
It could be, and it would be. The thing that you have to remember about Kharkiv right now, they're on significant power rotations, and behind these lines are softening. And if there's no power, there are struggles to properly manage your infrastructure. Yes, solar. Yes, generators. Yes, but guys, Kharkiv right now on rotating blackouts scheduled. as other cities are as well. And if there's no power, there's a challenge. But you're right. Kharkiv is 1 million people. I completely agree with you. It's my guess.
No, so it's interesting, like forcing the Ukrainians to the negotiating table where they might see it's advantageous, as in the Russians. So yeah, I think something bold like that could happen, for sure. If we come back to the northeast here, Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea, we have just the Institute for the Study of War saying that, all the places we talked about, there's activity there. Geolocated footage published on the 6th shows Russian forces recently advanced south of Novosibirsk. I do like me a bit of a geolocation. We're going to take this coordinate, say 97th, shows Russian tanks destroyed on the Terny approach. The tank was visible in high res, so this isn't actually Novosibirsk. This is another geolocation that the Institute for the Study of War referenced, and this is in the Torska-Terny area, which is here. We'll see where this Russian tank has been blown up and see if it can tell us anything about where the Russians are. And we see that is behind their lines, exactly what we'd expect if the Russians were active around there. That's behind their lines, so I don't think that shows any kind of advance. But I haven't got what they had in terms of the geolocation around Novosibirsk. But anyway, nothing too much to talk about with regard to that area. We do have some movement, according to Deep State Map, around the Vasily area. So this is the Seversk front line coming down from the Serebyansky forest to the northern kind of Solidar Bakhmut area. You got Seversk, the town or city there, and we've had some success with the Ukrainians around Bilahorivka. They're causing a bit of trouble for the Russians there, which is good news.
And but remember that area up there where they're causing the trouble is very difficult terrain.
Yeah,
very swampy, a lot of little river bottoms, and then it goes into forest, and then there's mining, and there's deep ravines. It's difficult territory.
Yeah, I often like showing this area on 3D rendering. So you got this chalk quarry where you've got a high sort of ridge here on one side that the Russians tried to assault the other week and failed. You've got a high ridge on the other side. You've got this kind of mountainous area in the middle of which Bilahorivka sits on largely lower ground, and Bilahorivka has been absolutely flattened. And then you've got this mountainous area, and then it goes, as mentioned,
into
to
the swampy,
Seversky Donetsk River, which the Russians tried to cross earlier on in the war at a place called Balaklaya, where they lost 100 pieces of kit in trying to cross there. I think a number of times they tried to cross. But this is very difficult because to attack from here, you've got to go through the forest, cross a river, which is hard enough as it is, let alone with the forest either side, and then the mountains on the other side. So this is a really...
That river right there, for a few kilometers there, is actually in a deep ravine. And coming up to the river, then the ground slopes way down. It's next to impossible to cross there.
Yeah, I mean, even this 3D rendering makes it good.
It's very accurate. You can see it.
Yeah.
But that's exactly. It's basically a big deep canal. That river right there.
Yeah. So that's really advantageous for the Ukrainians, which means that if the Russians are going to do anything with that area, they have to do it, I think, from the south, which is what I believe they're trying to do in going towards Verkhnokamayanska and then trying to come up there. But I think that it's just a little too much for them at the moment. The Ukrainians are quite well dug in that area. They are having a little bit more success, the Russians, and they have been over time in moving up this railway track from Bilahorivka, another Bilahorivka, of course, down here and towards Vyimka. We have Vasily, this area where the Russians, according to Deep State Map, the area in this area, the enemy's advance in recent weeks has now been clarified. So I presume that means that actually that might not be the last 24 hours, but just a clarification of where the Russians are, and that's an agreement with Syriac maps. So that is active, or at least has been active over the last few weeks. Now, what's interesting as we come down here, Greg, and I'm sure you have lots to say about this because you know people around Chasiv Yar.
Oh yeah.
First of all, we'll say
before you go to Chasiv Yar, great discussion going on in my chat right now. Johnny, is the Earth flat?
Don't get me started.
Okay, just checking. There you go, everybody in my chat. We wanted to get the brilliant one, JP Pearce's thoughts, because I mean we're looking at a flat map, but No, just messing. Go ahead. Just
Well,
having fun
no.
with the
So
chat.
I once gave a public talk down in Bournemouth to skeptics in a pub in Bournemouth, and I was debating stuff that you would love to listen to me debate. You know, the existence of God and all that.
Right.
And then someone who was a committed evangelical Christian. So I was like, we're having a bit of an argument. He stood up to ask some questions. I was like coming back at him, and he was like, and then I said something like, "Of course, you know that's not going to work, you know, this globe that we live on." And he was like, "Yeah, but the world is flat." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, like what am I going to argue now?" I was like, right, let's have an argument about the flat
Okay,
Earth.
listen, I am an evangelical, but I'm telling you right now, the earth's not flat, and do not listen to those clowns. Johnny, thank you for smoking that guy. I assume in Bournemouth your talk wasn't boring, because you're never boring. So okay, good.
But what's interesting about talking about the war, though, in terms of, you know, one of the great arguments against flat earthism is you wouldn't be able to do this war. Like how radars are used and how planes can get under the radar and how certain things are spotted before other things depends on the curvature of the Earth. So you have a radar that goes off straight. And of course, you know, if you've got a curved Earth like this, then you can get underneath the radar by hugging the Earth. And that's why we see planes fly as low as possible, so that the radar doesn't see them, because the curvature of the Earth protects them from that straight radar. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that one in there. Right, so we're going to come to Chasiv Yar. And the great thing about Chasiv Yar is that there hasn't been too much going on there for a couple of weeks. And this is really good news for the Ukrainians. Like in a place like this, when there's no news, it's good news, because there was a time when the Russians were really making significant advances. Ivanivska was, you know, just falling bit by bit quite consistently, but that seems to have stopped. And that's really important, because everyone seems to agree that Chasiv Yar will fall at some point, like the summer, late spring. Well, no, not anymore late spring, so summer. But actually, the Ukrainians have done a really good job of defending here, and apparently they brought in reinforcements. They've got things working in their favor at the moment, and they've also had a successful counterattack south of Ivanivska, apparently, which might have drawn Russians away from axes that they were attacking in, and gave them something to think about that stalls. I mean, it's all about, if you are going to lose Chasiv Yar, then make the Russians bleed as much as possible and stall the Russians, because really this is your fortress before you get to Konstantinivka, Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk. So this is a super important place. If by some minor miracle the Ukrainians can keep the Russians out from taking Chasiv Yar, that would be an insanely successful bit of defensive work. Completely I don't know how much they would throw into that. It's going to be a case of calculating the losses. But what are your thoughts on Chasiv Yar at the moment?
Chasiv Yar is, I completely agree with your analysis there, 100%. I will say this, even though you may not see the lines moving either way, they are trying to come up from the north and the south. But regardless of that, there's still artillery and glide bombs, and it's a destroyed city already. But
well, Tim White has said this today. Ukraine says there are around 2,000 artillery and airstrikes on Chasiv Yar every day.
No question.
Is absolutely insane. Though that
no
statistic,
question,
nuts.
It's gone. Have you seen the video of it? Yes.
I showed some imagery of Chasiv Yar recently that was basically like Bakhmut was, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I showed some a couple nights ago. AP had some video. It's gone. Yeah. 673 is the last number of civilians that are living there that do not want to leave.
I saw that today. Yeah.
They need to leave, because
that amazes me. Yeah.
By not leaving, they're impeding the work of the Ukrainian armed forces, because the Ukrainian armed forces will not just sacrifice those people, they'll try to fight against Russia and protect their people. It's just these are some areas where I would personally prefer Ukraine to be a little more aggressive and say, okay, this is a forced evacuation. I'm sorry. I know it's your home. I know your leg is broken. I know you're 85. We're going to pick you up. We're going to take care of you. We're going to get you housing, because here you're going to die if you stay here. So let's get you out. And they do that. But I mean, when you get to this point, because Chasiv Yar although there's not the urban warfare and they're moving from street to street yet, there's not much to move from. It's pretty bad shape.
Yeah, and so as Tim White continues, the highest number of invaders' deaths come here as Russia desperately tries to take a very important town at all costs. Now, I don't know where he's deriving that claim from, but if that's true, that is pretty interesting, because today we had 1,300 claimed losses, personnel losses, according to General Staff, and we have had something like 10 days out of 12 at over 1,000. This has been, if we can take the General Staff figures as either true or at least telling us a trend. So even if you don't believe 1,300 died, it's more than we had, say, 2 weeks ago. So something is going on. Like for the last 10 days, things have been pretty heavy for the Russians on the front line. And of course, that means probably for the Ukrainians as well. But if most of them are coming from Chasiv Yar, then this is possibly another kind of Bakhmut situation where the Russians absolutely kneecap themselves by taking territory on a very slow and gradual basis, but getting themselves absolutely hammered in terms of personnel losses every single day. And that's what the Ukrainians will want to see. They're like, yep, by all means have this 500 meters, but we are going to make you pay for it. And as long as we make you pay at a ratio that is advantageous for us, then this territory can be ceded. I mean, I would say that Chasiv Yar is important in and of itself.
No, I completely agree with you, because we cannot lose Konstantinivka and Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. That cannot happen. Just like Pokrovsk cannot happen, because then it's devastating. These are not devastating. It was in my chat, just a question, are some of the people that are staying in Chasiv Yar potentially pro-Russia? And the answer to that is yes. So they could be waiting for their liberation. I just don't understand what liberation they're looking at. But you would see it's a very, very small number if that is so. Secondly, there was a question in your chat on a super chat, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I do want to answer it. Can anybody confirm on the front line that shells are reaching them? Yes, they are having some get there 100%.
I have seen one unit declare that they are now firing where they weren't before, and I think it was a Panzer Howitzer 2000 and a Pion S2S7 unit that said that. So that's great. And just to say that from my personal point of view, in looking, and I know it's just some random bloke looking on the internet socials, but I am seeing more HIMARS videos coming out, where we just saw a complete drought of HIMARS videos, and now we're seeing lots of HIMARS videos. Great news, as we were talking about before, that Germany are now buying 3 HIMARS off America, and I think they're not operated by America. They're operated maybe somewhere in Europe or some. I'm not 100% sure, but that's Germany coming up with the goods again. They're doing a really good job. But yeah,
pushing them straight to Ukraine.
Yeah, we're seeing HIMARS videos. We're starting to see more artillery, a little bit more, and then of course, ATACMS. Yeah. Yes.
The only other thing before we move on down the map is I do know Russia incurs a lot of losses every day. But I appreciate you saying whether those numbers are accurate or not. I personally feel they're bloated every day, day after day, day after day. I watch and have information come to me, of course, from all my frontline Ukrainian buddies that I then filter through, and what I can share and what I can't share. But what I can't share makes me many times think, okay, those numbers can be the trend. I'm with you on the trend. But as far as the numbers, I follow a lot of Russian media as well. And I mean, direct down to the brigades. And I read it and I watch it and I watch their video and I watch all of that. And I know people go, well, Greg, be careful. You're not watching propaganda. I'm not watching propaganda. I've gotten into a lot of their stuff where I'm just watching their stuff too. And then I'm making the analysis. Do a lot more Russians die than Ukrainians? No question. Absolutely every day. But do I think it's 1,200 a day, 1,250 tomorrow, 12? I just don't. I think there's a trend line there. And I think Ukraine is, it's not that they're lying or fudging. I just, they have to keep morale up.
Yeah, so I talk about exactly this subject rather a lot, Greg, which is to say that I don't particularly care about the actual numbers
Hmm.
and totals, but it's like, okay, what's happening? What is this telling us? All the statistics are telling us a story. So we know at the moment, or at least we can extrapolate what happened in Avdiivka when the Russians attacked in Avdiivka, and you can see that around October. These are the general staff figures that one of my viewers, Dell, has put over into an Excel spreadsheet so we can check them out. So if we look at October, this time you can see APVs, so these are infantry fighting vehicles, APCs and whatnot. We can see a massive spike around there. That's when the Russians attacked Avdiivka and got absolutely hammered. They lost a lot of vehicles. Now, this is what the Ukrainian General Staff claimed, right? And what was interesting is the visually confirmed losses around Avdiivka that were really easy to spot then, because if you remember, there were these big columns going around the Terracon, near the Terracon in the north of Avdiivka, and then it got obliterated, and that's when Ukraine still had some artillery and they also had their FPV drones. And what was great is when the general staff claimed that there were high numbers, the visually confirmed evidence supported the fact that there were high numbers. Now, we didn't know whether they were exactly those numbers, right? Because it's talking about the whole front line. But when there were ups and downs in the general staff figures, there were ups and downs in the visually confirmed statistics, which means that if the Ukrainian general staff are inflating their figures, they are doing it consistently, and therefore it's a useful indication of trends. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, and I completely agree with you. I think that in the stock market, what do they say? The trend is your friend. And I do. I know right now, guys, it's just from my personal relationships, a lot of which I'm just, it's absolutely illegal for me to share. I could get in trouble with some of the stuff I know. But I can tell you right now, Ukraine is trying to find the magic way, and I don't mean that negatively, to disseminate information to Ukrainian people, and then the world's picking up on this information, okay, and then sharing it and translating it into English. They're trying to find the way to build morale within their people, keep their country from falling while they are fighting a massive nation of Russia that's still a large nation, okay?
Yeah.
And Russia is being openly supplied and helped from other nations, and Ukraine is being supplied now, once again, thank you to the United States and to European nations. That's coming back in, and Ukraine has to massage the data because you can't have panic, guys. And the mobilization, I know I beat on it like a dead horse, but it's a problem, and I'm going to layer it out for you guys, why and how it unfolds. Hopefully next week, Jane and I will work on putting all that together in a very logical, orderly presentation so that you understand when I say it's a problem. And the problem is getting the best momentum, putting up the best numbers. Not that they're trying to mislead or misrepresent, but they need a tsunami of support. You know, talking to Pete last night, this aid package here, for what he experiences on the zero, is a drop in the bucket to what Ukraine's really going to need going forward, month after month after month after month after month. And yes, I think it was your video or maybe Prof. Gertis, I don't know, talking about how we're starting to see where some aid is set up now to be going on long term and long term and long term, which is good. But it might have been you or
I've said that before, where you've had European nations like Norway was one of these, the European Union themselves, certain other nations have said, we are not just going to give you ad hoc aid packages, but we're going to here's a 5-year plan for how we're going to support you. And that's really good because it sends a message to Putin that they're in it for the long haul, that Ukraine won't just suddenly be left hanging, that there are certain nations that are going to give sustained support to Ukraine going on beyond the immediate horizon.
Yeah, so Ukraine is in a tough situation, but to be honest, they're doing a really good job. I mean, just like we were talking about at the beginning, Johnny, could you imagine if UK was in this situation, and what a challenge it would be for your nation? You know,
it'd be a nightmare. We're just not a military-minded nation in terms of our population. We'd just be all over the shop. We'd be like, but this is an island. No one's invaded us since 1066. What are you doing?
The point
yeah.
being, it's positive here, guys. The point being, Ukraine's doing a really good job.
And I think these stats, though, like I said, they do give us a trend, and it tells a story. So what you can see from these stats, it really is an accurate story. So when you see these peaks, like that's the beginning of the war, when they had stuff that was destroyed, sitting in big columns, then you had the Kharkiv counteroffensive, and then you had the Kherson counteroffensive. So this is where you're going to get big equipment losses. Then it went low for Russian losses as the Ukrainians did their counteroffensive, which means that the Ukrainians were on the attack using their equipment, and they would be losing more equipment than the Russians. And then you get to October time, and the Russians go on the attack, and you've got Avdiivka, and then you've got Novomikhailivka, Krasnohorivka, all these other ones that add to that. And then you look at something like artillery, and it tells a slightly different story. So artillery tells the same story, like beginning of the war, then you've got Kharkiv, then you've got Kherson, and then you have the Ukrainian counteroffensive. But in the middle of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, they realized that artillery was absolutely hammering them at places like Malatok, Kamachka. So they're like, right, we need to now take out Russian artillery. And so they explicitly went for Russian artillery, and they haven't really stopped. And so that then ticked up in a way that it didn't for armored personnel vehicles. So here it's just static. So again, this speaks to the accuracy of the general staff figures to some degree, in that we can map out what was going on from the statistics they're given. Now, if these were just random made up statistics, it would just be noise. But actually, we can pretty much read this war through the statistics. And I think that says a lot for the general staff figures. Whether they are 100% accurate or 70% accurate, it's, as you say, the trends that I think are important.
I completely agree. And just so you know, Professor Gertis is in here in the chat, and we just received an A+. We just received an A+ from the prof.
Good stuff. He's welcome to pop along. So
he's always welcome.
Let me know if he wants to pop along, and we'll add him in.
Text me if you want to hop in, Prof.
So we were in Bakhmut, and I think that this is really good news for Chasiv Yar. It is difficult. The Russians are really attacking, and most of the analysts say that Chasiv Yar, even though most of the movement to the front lines has been in the Avdiivka salient, it's the Chasiv Yar one that the Russians know is their most important one. And so this is the one that most analysts are kind of emphasizing. However, most of the bad news at the moment is coming from the Avdiivka salient, and whether that was all as a result of the dominoes from that unit that went AWOL around here, and it all seemed to happen from then on, and the Russians just they took
advantage of it.
Yeah. Whether it would have happened otherwise, I can't say. But good news that there's no movement in the Ocheretina area today, although. Right, that I've pronounced it in covered, 74 different ways.
Yeah, your pronunciation of Ukrainian is like at the highest level. It's incredible.
Thank you. This is certainly true. I'd agree. So then we come down to Umanska, and there are claims that the Russians have been in Umanska, which is a bit of a worry, because that's the other side of the river, or at least some of it is. You've got some of it to the south of the river, some of it to the north there. But the deep state map, Andrew Perpetua, and to some degree Suret maps just a little bit into Netalove here. The Russians are moving in this direction. Reporting from Ukraine did a video on this area to say that this is quite a nice area for the Russians to attack in, because the Ukrainians from higher ground on the other side of the river can funnel them into here and then hit them if they do have artillery and whatnot, to hit them in there. So reporting from Ukraine was quite, I wouldn't say positive about this, but it's not ideal for the Russians to be attacking there. Really, they want to be coming in from the north here, coming down behind the Durna River and on the high ground here, which is what they've been trying to do.
And a lot of that, between a lot of those very, very small villages, there's nothing but rural lands with the tree stops. That's it.
Yeah.
Big fields. Now, my concern, Johnny, and this is what I share on my stream, go up to a Chetny and give me a distance from just take the red corner there and measure it up to the Pokrovsk Highway on a straight line.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the intentions they'll be going
right there to
so
the intersection. Right there, which I go on that intersection nonstop.
So that's a 10.1 kilometers. So that's not far, and that's going to be one of their objectives.
That road right there is the key road that goes literally from, well, coming out of Pokrovsk, you can go both ways to Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro, but Dnipro, Pavlograd, Pokrovsk, in that little curve right there, and then it goes straight up to feed Konstantinivka, Chasiv Yar, and around to Kramator. So this is what, in this area, this is what I tell guys on my stream, and we will keep watching it every couple of days when I zone in the map. What is the distance from what is felt to be held by Russia with the markings to that intersection? Because that road, it's equal to, that road right there is equal to, if not even, in my opinion, that road's way more important than Chasiv Yar, okay? Because the Konstantinivka and all that, you have the high ground and you can just hold off, and it's a fortress. But that road right there is very, very important. And of course, Ukraine knows it. So they will work very hard to hold on that. And as we've talked, I'm very concerned not only about Ocherny there and the proximity of that road. We ride that road nonstop. Johnny, you've been on that road. You may not know it, but you've been on that road. You've been by that intersection. You've been in that curve. Okay. If I would have known then that Ocherny would fall, we would have stopped. And I'll say, Johnny, you're standing on the intersection. That's going to be very important one day. But then if you come down, I'm also concerned on the Karakova way.
Yeah, so we'll
I know
come
you'll
to that
get
in a
there.
second, because I can't move when I've got these arrows. Just to say the Ocherny, that's what I said. You weren't listening.
I know.
Ocherny.
Oh, by the way, Dr. Gertis says he's doing dishes and so in between things, and he's enjoying listening. Can't join right now.
Good man. So this is a useful place for the Russians because they have options. They can either try and move in a pincer to come down from Chasiv Yar. They can try and interdict that road, or they can try and do the pincer up from sort of Pervomaisky area up here and close off all this area, or all three of those things all at once. So, the Russians are in a useful place there. It is challenging. Syriac Maps, a pro-Russian mapper, says of this area, you can see the different areas that the Russians have gained in over so this is Umanska there. This is that kind of Umansky. This is that funnel area. The Syriac map says the Russians captured all of the eastern defense of Umansky and captured half the village. And in addition, troops reached the Yasnobrodivka Netelove road, taking control over a series of positions there. Moreover, Russian forces continue reducing the salient south of Pervomaisky. So that's in this area where there has been this pocket of land where you're thinking, I wouldn't like to be Ukrainian hanging out in a tree line there.
That would be tough.
Yeah, less than ideal. We've got a geolocation of, I presume this is Ukrainians, BUAR of the 110th Mechanized Working, dropping, I guess, IEDs on Russian occupiers. So we put that in to the old magic field here, and we see where that turns up. So this is going back up here. So that would be confirmation of what all the mappers pretty much agree with, that the Ukrainians are there. Russians are there, very close to Novoalexandrivka there, and we can just pump in this coordinate as well, just for a laugh. It's not that it's funny, and that is not there. I don't know why it does that. It doesn't like it sometimes. And this is the second geolocation, so pretty much the same place. So along that tree line, the Russians are getting hit with IEDs dropped from drones, but it does mean that they are probably in control of those areas. And then coming along, the other sources that I have is a null report saying Russian forces continue their advance in the Avdiivka sector and raise their flag in the settlement of Umansky. West of Orlivka, the area south of Semenivka and west of Orlivka are also considered under Russian control. So that is a claim that they raised their flag in Umansky, and that could well be on the southern side, probably in one of the first houses there, just as a bit of a PR exercise. Sometimes they do that and then retreat, and then it doesn't mean they actually control it, but
one of the things I like to do is when all these different reports come out, Just give it 48, 72 hours, and then we know the truth. It just, you know, there's so much information flowing.
What I generally find with Surrey Maps as a pro-Russian mapper, they say there's been, you know, the Russians control this, and they'll say they'll move their map, but actually they don't control it. They just maybe attacked into there, then being repelled. But they often end up being correct like 3 days later, because the Russians just keep going until they do take it.
It's like this. Okay, I have
inevitability.
I know you'll get down there in a second, but like Robotny, I mean, I saw the pictures where the Russian tank is in the middle of Robotny. So I personally saw it. And then there was reports that they were in the center, but I saw that from some of my guys. And then you come back, and then a little bit later you see the report. Well, okay, they're in Robotny in the center, but the maps haven't changed yet. But I have already seen the tank there, and it doesn't mean it's staying there. They can pull back or whatever, just like you said. But it was there. So then what do? You wait 48, 72 hours, then we see.
Yeah, and that's basically the difference between these mappers. So Surrey Maps would say he'll pin it straight away. Andrew Perpetua will wait until there's enough confirmatory evidence that it's like, yeah, they are robustly in control, and then they move. But so what this kind of tells you is that Surrey Maps will tell you where the Russians are attacking, and then Andrew Perpetua might tell you where they definitely control. And I think therefore it's quite useful to have.
Agreed. And I use your map, and I appreciate you giving me permission to do that, because I like how you have the layers there, and it really does. I think it gives the
complete picture. Hopefully.
The complete picture. Yes, thank you.
And
this is the one I don't like. I'm gonna be honest with you.
You can turn these off as well. So
I've learned how to do that.
Cool. So this is Krasnohorivka, where if we come on to Surat Maps, this is what they'd previously said, that the situation here is in the last 48 hours, Russians made new advances from the northern axis. Troops reached the central hospital of Mariinka and agricultural school. From the southern axis, the garages east of Heolohichna Street were taken. In addition, troops entered.
Touch him, Jesus! He's struggling over there.
Lomonosova and Mayakovskoho. Hey, check that out, streets. Taking control over some of the high buildings in the micro district. Currently, Russians are advancing eastwards along Sovietska Street. Only 700 meters remain between the northern and southern groups. As a result, the Ukrainian army began the withdrawal from the trench systems on the eastern side of Krasnohorivka. And there's just before you go to talk about that, Surat Maps then adds a little bit later. Although there is still no physical encirclement of the eastern zone of Krasnohorivka, the Russian army has fire control over all escape routes. The Ukrainian troops are having difficulty leaving their positions. We are likely to see surrenders there, is what they are saying. So actually, by the way, I think that has come out since JR did the mapping earlier. So this is in addition to what is here. So that imagine there's a little bit there, a little bit here, and a little bit down there that the Russians now control as according to Surrey Maps. And that means that this area is pretty hairy for the Ukrainians.
It is. It's very difficult here. And this town here is significant. It's larger.
It's a larger town,
It's larger than Chasiv Yar. Pre-war, about 16,000 people. The southern side that already has some occupation on it there that is agreed upon is where a lot of the 5 and 9 story and even 14 story large apartment buildings and infrastructure is. And there's some right there, just like he's showing you, and there's some factories and some plants. And then if you get up into the section that's not taken, if you just go north of that,
a brick factory there. But Karen.
Well, then you just get into really something that's kind of unique for a city this size, and that is the like suburban neighborhoods here. These are all homes, home by home by home by home, and a lot of those homes already have taken a lot of damage, just from shelling behind. But it's a tough hoe there. Yeah, and there
interesting. You've got some high-rise buildings there. Now that could be. Let's go and look at what Surat Maps says. Let's see if that. So
for sure,
that
that's
is
what they're trying to pinch.
Right what they're trying to. Right where they're trying to get. So it looks like Surat Surat Map says the Russians have control of maybe this amount, and then moving on to these. These will obviously be very useful for ATGMs and spotting and drone crews and whatnot. So,
and to be quite honest, those buildings, even though many times we see them leveled, and you've seen them yourself, those big buildings, you've stood right with them. You know, they're still pretty strong buildings that are usable for war. And protection and positions, and many times, you know, damaged buildings and buildings that have a third of it already destroyed and leveled to the ground are actually good places for military to operate.
Yeah, so that is, although there are no pins on the map, they will be forthcoming because that mapping has taken place since we did the mapping today, or JR did the mapping. So that is a very tough part of the front line. It seems to work in pulses. We've talked about this before. Some other analysts have noted that you know, you get a few days of pushing in Novomikhailivka, then they take a break, then they push in Krasnohorivka, take a bit of a break, breather, naturally sort of gather themselves, and then maybe push in Mariinka, so on and so forth, and it goes like that. And it seems that Krasnohorivka is where it's all happening in that particular area. Novomikhailivka has definitely calmed down somewhat. The Russians are trying to move into Pearce, but it's not like it was previously, so they might just be happy with that for the time being, because I think Konstantinivka there is a really key settlement because of the road it's on, and the Russians will want to make sure that they make a good go of taking that. So they may be preparing for a larger offensive there.
Yes,
I don't know.
The southern side, and you know, another town you keep your eye on here is coming out of Mariinka is Karakova.
Oh yes, so of course that's what we're talking about. This is really their key. So Konstantinivka is important for this this whole area with the road down to Vuhledar, but really Karakova here is definitely what they're. That's one they want there. They want Prokrovsk up here, and they want any of the ones up from Chasiv Yar. So all of them.
Ukraine holding, man. They're holding.
But they
they're holding.
And you know, with each of these villages, they're exacting a huge cost. So like I said about Novomikhailivka, now this might be one of their worst losses, area for losses here, but assume that on average the Russians lose, I don't know, 150 vehicles for a similar size sort of place, and then you start zooming out and you think, well, actually, if they want the whole of the Donbass, like as you said, Odessa's just like, it's just way out. They just are not physically, they're not physically capable of taking Odessa by land, or by sea even.
No.
But the Donbass is something that they've said they wanted right from the beginning. But to take the Donbass, they have to take all of this area of Donetsk, and it's just going to be.
They're counting on enough pressure to cause a withdrawal. That's what they're counting on. They're not counting on we're going to take village by village. That I really believe, and that's why you see a lot of these new defensive lines that are now properly being put in, you know, back 20 and 30 kilometers from the front or even further. And you've seen them. That's what their hope is. And they being Russia, but I don't think it's going to happen either. I completely agree with you. I
know that they've got a lot bigger population, but they are really struggling to mobilize significant numbers of people. And if they're not going to do a mass mobilization, then that they will continue. But actually, it's more to do with the equipment. I think that we're starting to see a lot more D20, D30 howitzers being lost. We're seeing stockpiles of those D30 howitzers that are really, really old. We've seen the stockpiles down to 37% back in, and the ones that are left will be ones that can't be cannibalized, that are knackered. And you're thinking, if you're in that position where we know for sure that you're drawing on stockpiles of old towed howitzers, then what does this say about your ability to really properly do a massive offensive? Now, there is talk that they are building new stuff and then not sending it to the front line, that they are amassing that, ready for this big summer offensive that some people say is going to happen. But I just think right now, Ukraine have been on their knees, right? Why would you stockpile? I would just have been throwing everything at the Ukrainian front lines right now, because now strike while the iron is hot, and this is the time Russia should be going crazy. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I would just counter that by saying, okay, if we throw the kitchen sink at them and then they're resupplied, then we don't have a kitchen sink.
But then,
you know, it comes
but
back
then
to
if
the
they're going to
Soviet.
wait and throw that kitchen sink like 3 months down the line, then
I don't think they want to
Ukraine
lose.
be even better supplied.
I understand. Once again, Soviet mentality. Never forget that as one of the avenues of thought in any analysis. Soviet mentality, they don't care. All they want to do is destroy. And we're watching it meter by meter. I don't know. It's really good questions because I agree with you. I would have put hammer down right now.
Yeah, because you could feel it was panic. It's feeling like it's weird because this week just feels like, oh, do you know what? There's some stuff coming. I feel better about it. But like 2 weeks ago, you're thinking, when this Ocheretny, yeah, that's what I said. When Ocheretny was looking bad, and it still is looking a bit dodgy, but it was, you were thinking, goodness me, if Russia could really throw another 20,000 people and a whole bunch of new equipment at that, there'd been all sorts of trouble, and yet it didn't, and yet they haven't. So I don't know. Anyway,
no,
I won't stop them from not doing that.
Correct.
Right. We're going to go to the Velika Novosilka area where, although there's been a bit of clarification here by deep state maps, I don't think that's going to be a Ukrainian counterattack. Although the Ukrainians did counterattack in Uruzhaini and have pushed the Russians back. So there was a counterattack inside the village, but the Ukrainians are being pushed back in Staromyorska now, which is on the other side of the river. Remember, we talk about the left bank and the right bank in the direction of the river flow. I think the question is, which direction does it flow? I think this river flows north to south. That's what I'm going to say. So this side is going to be the right bank. And on the right bank, you would have Staromyorsky. And the Ukrainians being put under quite a bit of pressure there. This seems to have popped up again. Like I wonder that, you think the Russians are trying to push in a lot of places all at the same time. And then you're thinking, well, do they have the depth of reserves? Like, would they not have been better off moving units from here and taking them up to where they're having greater success and really like taking the Ukrainians on? Or are they just spreading themselves too thin? But again, I don't want to question what the Russians are doing, because if they're doing the wrong thing, then keep on doing that.
Let them continue.
Yeah, I just find it interesting. Anyway, Surat Map says there the Russians have entered Staromyorsk, taken control of 20% of the locality until the House of Culture that's in there. So whether the Ukrainians are going to push back that, I don't know. And then we've got some geolocations that come from the because I haven't really been popping into the Institute for the Study of War, but they say geolocated footage shows that the Russian forces recently advanced along Centrina Street in the south of Uruzhaini. So this is relevant to where we are now. This
Centralna, and that means Central Avenue.
Yep, and again, I don't think you were listening. That's what I said. So GIC claims that, it claimed Russian BTR dodging all attacks, which is interesting because the BTR is essentially going to be an armored personnel carrier. So it's absolutely careening into Uruzhaini here. It said, apparently dodging all attacks against it in Uruzhaini. I'm wildly confused. It's coming from inside Uruzhaini. How did it get there? And it starts here and ends here. So, so it started, this vehicle is, in this position as the video starts. Which is interesting because that is under Ukrainian or grey zone, and then ends up in this position. So it might be going backwards. It might be just trying to get out of dodge as quickly as possible. And then ends up back there. So that is no wonder it's moving so quickly. It is getting out of dodge. And quite often what you see with the Russians is these vehicles, these columns that are attacking, aren't going to do the damage. So the tanks and infantry fighting vehicles in a column of 4 or 5 vehicles are only intending to drop troops off. It's all about dropping a bunch of troops in a position to get a foothold, and then do that again, maybe get a few more troops. You might get a couple of vehicles blown up, but as long as we can get like one set of troops there, then they can add to the ones we've got there before, and they keep doing that, and that's how they build up force concentrations and then end up taking places. But then they lose a lot of vehicles and troops in so doing.
I will tell you one thing in your analysis of that Southern Front village. It was excellent, but your ability to use Google Earth is quite impressive.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, seriously, no joking aside, it's really good, man. It's really good, Johnny.
Oh, thank you, Greg. That's very kind of you. So this is the Velika Novosilka area, which has again, woken up. It's getting a bit tasty there. Robotina is there are no changes there today, but it has been pretty interesting there. And there's a big difference between the mappers. Surite Maps saying that the Russians have largely got control of Robotina, but other mappers not agreeing with that. The Institute for the Study of War actually not talking about it, she's saying it's no confirmed changes there, which is what the map is saying, but it's
this
whether
is one
the
of those
Russians...
places you wait 72 hours and we'll know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm amazed that the Ukrainians have held on to this area for as long as they have, because it's just, as I've said to you before in similar live streams, yes, it's really important to stop Orikhiv being on the front line itself. So it has that. It's basically like, we've got to fight somewhere. We'd rather fight down here than up there.
Well, you definitely don't. Orikhiv, of course, is already. I mean, we drop a lot of aid in Orikhiv. It's demolished already, but it's still, it's still a nice town. But
it's a hub as well.
Oh, it's very important.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, speaking directly with guys there, they said, okay, this is another town, Orikhiv. This is why Robotny is so important. They're expending Russian stuff. And it's vitally important, because if Orikhiv was to fall in the future, and there's nothing on the horizon for that, okay? Ukraine's very well stabilized there. It is in a ravine. It's in very low ground, but Ukraine is set up well there overall. But it's a challenge, but Ukraine's okay. But if that was to fall, they said our next drop point is between 20 and 30 kilometers. And I think that's what Russia's hoping for, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because Zaporizhzhia is the one area where Ukraine are well fortified. As far as I understand it, this is where they properly built defenses ahead of time, in good time, and those fortifications are like properly built and constructed, etc. Whereas in the Avdiivka area, because they weren't expecting, and it was poor foresight, they should have built them anyway when they were further up here in this white line. That's the May the 30th lines for the Ukrainians. When they were there, they should have built defensive lines here, like serious defensive lines there. They didn't, because they didn't think they were going to lose Avdiivka. They ran out of equipment. The Russians started using guided glide bombs, and then they absolutely hammered them, and largely on account of, as I say, running out and using those guided glide bombs. But they didn't have the proper defenses to fall back on, and then they had to start building those defenses even further back, out of the way of like drones from hitting excavators and everything. So you've probably got major defensive lines here east of Pokrovsk, but you don't have them exactly where they needed them, which is where they are now. This is where they needed big defenses, and they do have them down, by all accounts, at least as far as I understand, in this kind of area of Zaporizhzhia. So as Greg says, the Ukrainians should be in a good position if they did have to retreat from there, to actually be fairly well fortified.
Well, and the other thing that I would say, just about, you can leave your map exactly where it's at. The other thing that I would say about the positioning of the map right there is Zaporizhzhia on the left, and coming over, all of that ground slopes down. So yes, there are some places like over Robotny and over Orikhiv where Russia does have some high ground, but in general, Ukraine has the higher ground north of that, because all of this land here is sloping down. In general, it's going downhill towards the Black Sea, and it's just a continual slow grade down. So that's another positive for Ukraine there in general, having the higher ground.
And then really that's that. So nothing to report particularly about Krynky. It's been an interesting place, Krynky, because the Ukrainians appear to be expanding their bridgehead, going to the southwest, which is kind of bizarre, because they've been hanging on tenuously to that. But it again, like I said the other day, and interested to hear your thoughts, Greg, that I've seen this as not a realistic place for a bridgehead because they don't have the resources, Ukraine. So this is about fixing the Russian troops, attriting them with their, Magyar's birds, artillery when they've got the ammunition, all that kind of stuff. The drone warfare here is effective for the Ukrainians, and they have taken out an awful lot of Russian kit and personnel. So the people here are really being used as bait to bait in the Russians.
They are.
But if you are eventually going to take land back, like if you are thinking at some point we are going to take this land back, which is what the Ukrainians have to hope, I guess, then it's far easier to take it back if you have at least some foothold. If they give up this foothold completely, then they have to go about again going through the very expensive process of getting a foothold somewhere along the Dnipro. So actually it might be worth them losing troops fairly consistently, but maybe not crazy amount of troops, to just keep that foothold so that they won't lose loads of troops in taking a new foothold.
I completely agree. I showed some video a couple days ago of Krynky. I had some drone footage where the guys were being delivered some Easter bread, and people couldn't believe it on the stream. Like they were going, "Hold on, it's not even possible. It's leveled, but the guys are underground. There's nothing left. It's obliterated."
Yeah.
But they're holding it, and they're doing an amazing job. Are we losing guys there? Yes, and we lose the guys actually not that get to the position a lot of times because they're so well entrenched. That's when we lose them, is when they're crossing the river. Exactly.
And probably down the Konka River as well if they try and get down there. I don't know, but yeah, it's getting there that's difficult. I mean, luckily it's not frozen anymore because that added a real challenge. They could only go there certain routes and certain times of the week and whatnot, or it was far more challenging. Now it's going to be a little bit easier, but nonetheless not the easiest thing to do. The other place that's been interesting of the last week is
down here on the island.
This island where the Russians have been attacking with jet skis apparently recently.
Yes.
Ukrainians took that back according to general staff, and that was generally accepted by the Russians as well, and it appears that the Russians are trying to take it back and losing, supposedly they're losing quite a lot of troops in so doing.
Let me just describe that territory for people. Bayou, swampy, little creek routes all throughout, jungly trees in portions, and not like a jungle in South America, but very dense. It's a challenging. So you can see, just like Louisiana, the little bayou things cut through. That's what it is. It's like a bayou. It's exactly what it is, actually, a bayou.
Yeah, so that's going to be challenging. There's going to be awful lot of drone warfare going on. A lot of boats. I guess boats can only go in certain places, right? So it's not like a tank or an IFV where you've got a tank or an IFV can go anywhere around here, like effectively. Like boats can only be in certain areas, and so they are going to be easier to target, and it must be.
I'm going to tell you something right now. Those of you in ATP Geopolitics and my channel, Greg Terry, you were just dropped the most incredible amount of knowledge on on your minds from Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Boats can only work in the water.
Jonathan, this is the kind of knowledge that you will only learn here.
You're only going to get it with Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Boats only work in water, but tanks can go anywhere on dry ground.
It's true. Apart from some tanks that can go in the water. But we don't want to confuse, don't confuse the viewers. They're not clever. I have to really hold their hand sometimes.
I think this is why people enjoy us doing this once a week, man. That was so good.
It's been too long, Greg. It's been too long.
Well, I had to go out of town and for you guys on ATP Geopolitics, I did go to the Ukrainian embassy, and my visa's in here and ready to go. So all of that's good. So, and my grandmother was hurt. She broke her hip and all that, but she's doing better. Everything's good. We're back to normal now. So
we're going to go through some super chats and then get on to a couple of bits of discussion for everyone.
Andrew's in here. Greetings to you, Andrew, Mercado Media. Thank you.
Oh, hello.
yeah.
I still am yet to join him. And
Well,
actually,
you've got to hook up with Andrew Mercado. I'll make that.
No, we have like,
you've
but
connected. Okay.
it just hasn't happened.
Okay, great.
I was due to come on, I think, when you were on once, but
you were derelict in your duties. But I know that what you were doing is you were actually in the back study room of the Jonathan M.S. Pearce Institute of Higher Learning, and you were discovering that boats only go on water. And I know it was quite revelation. Once you got through the flat Earth cycle and figured out the Earth is round, you then discovered that boats go only on water.
I think you'll find I was just mainly drinking tea. So, Kevin Forst, thank you very much for 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Very kind of you, my good man. And John Larkin, who's been a member for 2 months. This is at Greg's, saying UK has tons of camo kit rigs. Are they not? Why are they not sent? I don't know. I think we are sending stuff like camo. I think that all that kind of equipment is possibly easy stuff to go. I presume that goes, and you just don't hear about it. It's not the big ticket items, so they don't like shout about it as much. But interestingly, UK has a lot of. Someone was saying recently it was who's your man, Brendan, who's actually in this area in the Dnipro. What's his name? Brendan Mitchell, is it?
Brandon Mitchell.
So he was saying that the UK has a problem, particularly in a Dover area. So here's the UK, just in case you didn't know. We get a lot of migrants crossing the English Channel here from Calais area over to Dover, and what happens is they end up having the boats sort of confiscated or found
they do that on boats, not tanks.
This is true.
Yes.
And the great thing about the boats that they use is they often have outboard motors and engines, and the boats themselves, if they're not just inflatables, they end up getting put in a field somewhere near Dover. And Brandon Mitchell was saying that we've got all of these outboard motors and boats the Ukrainians are absolutely screaming out for. Why are we not just giving all of them? There are certain things that could happen that don't seem to be happening, that appear to be fairly simple things, along the lines of, we've got tons of camo kits, why aren't we giving them? We've got tons of outboard motors and boats, why are we not giving them to the Ukrainians? They've absolutely been desperate for them along the Dnipro River Delta, but hey.
I believe the last German supply that was sent a couple of weeks ago included 60 boats.
UK, one of the UK ones did.
Okay,
it might have been German as well, but certainly UK one did.
It's good. And I've been down there along that river everywhere, and the guys do use boats. And you may go, oh, what kind of boats are they, guys? Like really, like fishing boats? Seriously,
anything, not anything and everything.
Like what you would look at, in your local town, wherever you're at, so like a 20-foot fishing boat with an outboard motor. That's what they're using. They modify it a little bit.
Yeah,
they actually. So I'll tell you what they do is they modify them. They adjust the seats. They put in foot straps, and they actually have these things when they get in the boat, they can actually put their feet in and they strap it. And then it has a quick release in case they need to jump out of the boat, and it keeps them in the boat because they're cooking it, guys.
Yeah.
And they have all different they just custom mod it themselves, places for their bags, places for their weapons, whatever. And they go. And pretty amazing.
It's fairly attritional. So we see every day Andrew Perpetual's Lost List has a boat that's been sunk, usually Ukrainian boat, and it's just attritional. The drones do get to drop, or there are mines, marine mines in the river as well. But also a lot of drones hammer the boats because you know where they're going to go, because boats can only go on water. So there you go. Stephen Bendel, thanks so much. We read that question out, but I forgot to actually thank you, Stephen. Really, really kind of you. Some Norwegian love. Roberto Baggio, so thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Awesome thank you, sauce. Roberto. That's my man there.
And Richard Bennett, always very generous. Thanks, Richard, for gifting 580p Geopolitics memberships. And John Larkin here, coming back with some, when the F-16 arrives with whatever munitions are allowed, will the Russians then send more missiles through Belarus to hit them? And both of you, how will that affect Poland as in shooting down errant missiles from Russia? I mean, a lot to unpack there, but basically when the F-16s, I don't know exactly where they are going to be positioned, but the Russians will already have a fairly good guess at which air bases are going to be the most conducive for having F-16s on. They can't take off from everywhere. They're not as versatile as, say, the Gripens that can take off from roads more easily than the F-16s. The F-16s suck up quite a lot of FOD, foreign object debris, from the runways. They've got these big air intakes, and that means that you have to have decent runways that are well looked after.
They're going to be somewhere in that country, somewhere.
Well, I keep talking about my idea that they should be kept in Romania and in Poland, and then when they need to be flown on a mission, they then fly them to, say, Khmelnytski from Poland, refuel them there, and then go on a mission, come back, refuel back there, and then only have them, there for about refueling, and then park them up in Poland, and then Russia will never strike Poland, and you're just parking them there. We're just using.
I would love, with the man who knows that boats goes on water, with that military planning right there, it's legendary. And we'll make sure to send that straight to Sirsky. But to be honest,
I was pretty upset that Sirsky got the job instead of me. But there you go.
Yeah, but it's a great way to put a lot of heat on Russia if you were to do something of that nature. It'd be really good, actually.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit risky as allies, and actually, we set out how it's going to work rather than Russians giving us the red lines and we're being so afraid to cross those red lines. We need to take the initiative and say, screw you guys. You were the ones that invaded. If you cross our red line, this is what's going to happen to you.
That's the problem. We do not have those voices right now, and I talked about this a couple nights ago, and I was happy when John Kirby actually came out and said, if you do not want to be hit by foreign munitions, then leave the country.
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Kirby. Finally,
easy solution, guys.
That's the kind of statement that needs to be stated, and that's what the Kremlin understands, guys, not this meandering.
Yeah, and the talk about missiles in Poland to fire into Ukrainian territory, I think that has been discussed. I've not heard anything for some time, but it certainly was on the agenda a month or two ago when we had that missile that came in for sort of 9 minutes or whatever. No, it wasn't. It was a matter of seconds, but it worked out 9 kilometers. It had covered 9 or 10 kilometers.
Seconds or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and so again, that would be, if I was in charge of stuff, it would be like, right, we'll do that, and what are you going to do about it, Russia? Because Russia's only answer, they keep like threatening. They say, oh, there'll be really dire consequences if you do X. Then we do X, and they go, okay. And they don't actually do anything, and because all they have is nuclear. Like, that's the only escalation they have, other than chemical weapons. But assume that they've only got nuclear, right? So that we can start pushing the envelope a little bit, because actually they aren't just going to go nuclear if NATO shoot down a Russian cruise missile that's very close to NATO territory. I just don't think they will, and we should be doing that. No, there you go.
Well, that was a really good impersonation of George Bush you did, by the way, there in your perfect Queen's English. He goes, I don't believe they're going to go nuclear. I heard it.
Oh God, yeah, and I used to be a big person on saying that properly, and now, because my speech is
you've been around me on the front line, I got you talking like a redneck. Brian Ivey, I love his profile pic. We always say that, but that looks like a man on a mission there.
Thanks, Brian. Always generous. Good man. And he's actually got a question for you. He says, hey, Greg, I reached out to a few organizations about getting trained in demining. I got the cold shoulder. Well, just no response. Is there no need for volunteers for that in Ukraine?
I can't answer. Okay. Is there a need? Absolutely. There's need everywhere in Ukraine. I would recommend you send a message to Harvey EOD. I think that's what it is, Harvey EOD, because we helped him. Let me look it up.
Yeah, if you do that, I'll do a few more. John Panciotti, who is often so insanely generous. Carry on, Johnny. You're a true legend. Thank you so much, John. Just really incredibly generous of you, and not for the first time. So really, really do appreciate that. We have Weebit Furry. Great to see you guys.
Me in my chat.
Great to see you
Harley.
guys.
Harley. That's it. Thank you,
Harley
Sally.
EOD.
It's
Harley
in
EOD.
it's in my chat if you want to grab it. I've done some stuff with his organization. They're legit. They have English speakers in Ukraine working on this. That's who I would reach out to. Thank you guys in the chat.
Weebit Furry says, great to see you guys chin wagging again. I love the synergy. You guys have the best streams. Great stuff. This is actually a scientific fact. I read a paper last week in the International Journal of YouTube, and it said that our streams are categorically the best streams. And all I can say is thanks, Mum, for writing that. It was really kind of you. No, thanks, Weebit Furry, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, Weebit Furry. Thank you for that.
Zoe Blackmore, one for you there, Greg, says Ukraine started as one of the poorest countries in Europe. They have been doubly invaded. They're doing incredibly with the limited resources they have. You won't get a disagreement from me.
Could not agree more. Thank you, Zoe.
And John Larkin back for more generosity. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate that. Brits, what we were taught, hunker down, take it, then we stand up and say, feck you all. I think that's a lesson we can all learn from. Take it a bit and then say, actually, I've had enough now. It's time to, and I think.
Well, I think there's the old rock song, we're not gonna take it.
No. So you started off, this is a great song. You started off tonight talking about how the US, the UK, Cameron, Obama, other nations around the world in 2014 did not do enough at 2014. But this is a case of like, it's all about nuclear escalation. So it's all about, well, they've got nukes. We're worried that they're going to use them. So we need to tread really carefully. But it gets to a point where Russia take the piss out of that. And they just push that envelope further and further and further. And then we say, no, we're not going to take it anymore. And we've kind of got to that position, but there's still a lot of that. Oh, but they still got nukes left over. So there's still a bit of the Jake Sullivan administration in the Biden administration going, yeah, not too sure about that. You still got the Italians who are compromised by half of their government being pro-Russia, saying, no, we're not going to have Italian troops in Ukraine, which is okay, fair enough. And then you can't use our missiles inside Russia. It's like, come on. Like, do you know what? I'm not massively nationalistic. I'm not super pro, like flag waving British. British are amazing. I get criticized for criticizing the UK too much by some people, and then by other people for not criticizing them enough. But I will say that I am quite impressed with at least our rhetoric with David Cameron. That's not a person I previously liked at all, but I think he's done a pretty good job as foreign minister to say that actually, you can use our weapons inside Russia. We are going to give you more. We're going to spend more on as a percentage of GDP on defense, and we're going to give you everything we can, but we just don't have an awful lot. And I'm fairly happy. I think we could do more. I think the UK could definitely do more. We're the fifth, sixth biggest economy in the world, right? We could do more. We should do more. But we are, rhetorically at least, saying the right things, and we're not being too afraid of the old.
There's a combination when you deal with, and I call it Soviet mindset, but there's a mindset you have to deal with, and that's why supply is important. Standing with Ukraine is important, but equal to that is proper rhetoric. And I can only tell you this from experience, guys, especially in Russia. A lot of times when I've had to go and deal with a document or deal with anything that's still stuck in that Soviet system, and the reality is, he who yells the loudest wins. And I've had to deal with that even in Ukraine, in old systems that are being washed out of the Soviet Union. And you never show weakness. You never show weakness. And it's like I've actually crossed the border and had issues coming in. They said, well, listen, you're bringing this in and that in and da 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 da. And I look at them and say, listen, here's the bottom line. I'm coming in, so we can sit here for 8 hours and I can make this phone call or that phone call, but I'm coming in. So do you really want to waste time doing this? And that's how you do it. You're direct, still relatively polite, but your position is well known. That is highly respected. And unfortunately, the position of the world is not directly known. Yes, we're sending money. Yes, we're sending supplies. Yes, we're sending arms. But you also need with that the rhetoric that they hear it. No, this, like you said, this is the red line, and it's not your red line anymore. It's ours. And if you don't like this, take your tanks and go home, because it's coming. And it works on the psyche. And that's just a part of that. Whenever you can listen to people, even like Rick the Ukrainian, where he begins to break down sometimes mentalities and mindsets, or Zhenya talks about it on my channel all the time, you really have to understand that. And we do try to educate you on that.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Emmanuel Macron. I think he realizes what's going on. He's saying all the right things. Whether France is giving enough stuff is another question, and whether he's genuinely following that up. But it does seem that France is in a very different position now than it was 2 years ago. And Emmanuel Macron is saying we need strategic ambiguity, so we keep them guessing. We need to be the ones setting the red lines, not them. We need to be pushing the envelope. We're fine with putting troops in Ukraine. And all of the stuff I'm hearing from him is exactly what I want to hear from all of the leaders. But it seems that they go either one way or the other. We've had Gabrielis Landsbergis, the Lithuanian foreign minister, today or yesterday, further saying that he will happily, well, not happily, but they are up for putting Lithuanian troops in Ukraine for training. He's talking about getting a coalition of forces to do training for the Ukrainians inside Ukraine, because actually it's not particularly great that the Ukrainians have to send their troops, say, to UK in the Interflex Operation Interflex, where the UK and all these other nations are training the troops there, or in Poland or in Germany, because that costs money. It takes these people away. The number of days they get training compared to the amount of time it takes is not great. So I saw the stats for that. It's not brilliant. Whereas if this was happening in Ukraine, it would be way more efficient and way more effective. So getting a coalition of forces inside Ukraine, and then that pushes the envelope, that sees it as acceptable to get. You could then have a little bit of mission creep in a good way, whereby we're starting to train, and then you might get a unit coming over there to help, like, do some air defenses in the west of Ukraine, so on and so forth. And before you know it, it's like lobster boiling in a pot. NATO are helping more effectively inside Ukraine. And I just like that idea. I'm not trying to advocate all of us sending troops but maybe I kind of am. One of Greg's here late again says, Dunkonu 23, howdy Jonathan. Howdy in my best American. So that is one for Greg, and another one for Greg, which is Dunkonu 23 again, gifting 5 Greg Terry memberships. Very kind, my good man or woman, I don't know. And
that's a Michael Jordan man right there.
Indeed, I mean, I knew that, but just hedging my bets.
Well, you got boat knowledge.
Yeah, then no greater knowledge. They exist. Thank you so much for, on behalf of Greg again, a quick view of Putin's punched and prickly pudding face for the parade would punctuate your presentation. There's some serious alliteration there. Or was it his double? What's your view on Putin having a double?
I don't believe it.
See, I do. There you go.
But maybe I should listen to you, because I know that boats go on water now.
Yeah.
There was a question in my chat about the football player being mobilized, and what happened to him. He was mobilized, guys. He turned 25 years old. It is a second league team, and they're dealing with the kidnapping talk, but he turned 25 years old and he was mobilized, and you're going to see more of this. We're going to do it. It'll within the next week or so. We're going to have a really.
What do you mean by the kidnapping talk?
Well, they talked about how he was, the TCC took him, but the reality is he was at the office and then they detained him.
Because I talked about this earlier in my video.
It's going to happen more
earlier
and more
today, and I was trying to get across the point that, of course, you're going to see people bundled into vans, and that's not like bad, as in. So let me explain myself. Like,
I agree with you.
If you are evading draft in Ukraine, you are breaking the law, right? And so, therefore, if you are found on the streets and you should be serving in the army, They are not going to drive up to you and say, "Oh, hello, Mr. Smith. You need to be in the army. Can you come to the recruitment office at 12 o'clock on Friday afternoon, please? Okay, we'll see you later." That's because if he's been evading draft for a year, he's going to continue. He's just going to run away to another place. So you have to detain them in the same way that this is someone who's broken the law as it is stipulated. In the same way that if the police came across a murderer or a thief or any other kind of criminal, they would bundle them. They would put handcuffs on them and bundle them into a police vehicle and take them away to the police station. Like, that's what you do with people who've broken the law. Now, the problem is that this doesn't do any PR good, because Russia can use these as examples of how, I don't know, how terrible the Ukrainians are for doing that, except the Russians are probably doing pretty similar things. But the reality is that these people have broken the law, and that's what you would expect. I mean, how else would you expect draft evaders to be processed? I don't get it. So yeah, you're going to see that more.
And listen, if you were to go up to the everyday Ukrainian fighting for their nation, maybe they're working their job and they're sending money to the front, and they're doing everything that's been happening the first few years of war, and then you have volunteers, and then you have soldiers, and then you have government people, and all of this. A large group of them will say this should have been done a year ago, because there is and has been a lot of draft evasion, and it's not just draft dodging, guys. It's like there are young men that will not come out of their apartment for weeks. And this is a fact. And it has to be solved.
I mean,
it has to be solved, because if we can send them every weapon in the world, but they don't have enough soldiers.
Yeah. And like, I get that. It does feel weird to see people like taken forcibly off the streets, but I can't see it any other way. Like, either you have a law that has been ratified in Parliament, that is being enacted and then enforced. Like, either that's a law or it's not. If it's not law, then whatever, but it is a law. It's a law of the land, in the same way that is the law of the land that you can't steal from a shop, that you can't do X, Y, and Z. And you can disagree or agree that should be a law, but it is a law, and it's been voted in by a democratically elected government. And I don't know that there's any other way of being able to interpret that. You can try and take them to court if you are maybe forcibly drafted like that, but I don't know.
Well, you've had, I mean, I have friends that have escaped, and I mean, they're still my friends. I completely disrespect them for running away from their country. But they literally would go on Facebook and social media and tell young men how to escape, and where they swam across the river, and what country they went through, and gloat about it. And I'm telling you guys, this is the truth here. And Ukraine's done with that mess, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Yeah. Does the TCC or the draft group break the law themselves quite regularly, and they need to be demolished as well? Beating kids in the street, it's a fact. They've been doing it in western parts of Ukraine. They've been doing it in southern parts of Ukraine, and it's tragic, and it is real, and they are arrested, and they are removed. But does it happen? Has it happened? Will it happen again? Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that Ukraine has to solve this problem. And as you can see where our conversations went, and I've been talking about this like for a week on my regular live streams, this is a big deal. Big deal. And I think we're all being educated and learning about it. And this is why I really need to talk to my guys in Ukraine and get a really nice presentation and say, okay, this is what the draft looks like. And so that way we all on the same page trying to understand it.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing that. Actually, that sounds
Mhm.
like a really interesting video you're going to do on that.
Yes.
Michael here, who's from Canada, says Draft Evasion lives across the street from me in Canada. I was speaking to someone who's Ukrainian but not living in Ukraine that knows 3 draft dodgers who are not in Ukraine anymore, and but it's again, what I'm not doing is judging those people for running away necessarily. I'm not them. It's easy to say, oh, you should be back fighting for your country or the X, Y, and Z, because like I've got no horse in this race. I'm an English person
Excuse
in
me.
another country.
Excuse me. I'm going to interrupt you before you rant. You do have a horse in the race. You have personally been to the front lines. You have physically invested your resources into this war. You spend
Yeah,
hours every
yeah,
day,
that's probably the
and
wrong
you have
phrase for me to
risked your
use.
lives much more than many of these draft dodgers have, who are living in their mother's basement, scared to come out because they're scared of this war,
Yeah,
or they've swam across the moat or taken a boat across
yeah,
the river and sit there and gloat about, hey, I escaped. I'm not fighting in that
yeah.
war, losing my life. Sir, you're invested. You've been there. So
Yeah,
kudos to you,
that's probably
JP.
it's probably the wrong phrase. What I mean is that I can't talk to the experience of being drafted and thinking about what the percentage chance is that I might die or be injured and have a family to all of these considerations. And so it would be easy for me to judge these people, but possibly unfair for me to judge them as opposed to maybe a fellow Ukrainian judging them. Do you know what I mean? So like
Yeah, but
I will say what rationally should happen and what I would like to happen, but I'm probably not going to stand there and say you're a bad person, or at least I'd have to couch it in with many caveats.
understood. I'm just telling you personally,
Yeah, yeah,
if you were in that situation, you wouldn't be dodging. I'm telling
yeah,
you.
yeah,
You've
yeah,
got the character, you've
yeah.
got the intestinal fortitude. You went to the
I
front
think I agree
lines.
with that, but then without being in that position, I guess I'll never know. Hopefully, I'll never have to know.
Agreed.
But yeah, I
I
just
believe
wanted
in you,
to put
Johnny
that out
Pearce.
there.
Listen, there's more jobs in the military, guys, than getting on the zero line. There's drone units, there's administration, there's truck drivers, they need everything right
Yeah,
now. And
great point. Yeah,
yes,
because actually there's an awful lot of jobs that you can do, like even if you're a conscientious objector. So not so I
exactly.
did a video on this recently about whether people they're entitled to refugee status if they're running away from, if they're draft dodgers, just on point of fact that they think it's too risky and they don't want to die, which is different from saying I disagree with the war, I'm either politically, religiously, or morally opposed to the fighting or whatever. That's a conscientious objector. But running away because I don't want to be drafted is a different thing than a
Correct.
conscientious objector. But even if you are a conscientious objector, you can still help Ukraine. So rather than saying, right, I want nothing to do with this war, it's like I'm a conscientious objector, but I'm going to help in this hospital, or I'm going to help, I'm going to do things that are going to be that someone needs to do to help Ukraine prevail in the war. That is maybe a different moral character, different, maybe much more humanitarian side of things, or go out and demine. I don't want mines to blow people up. You can conscientiously object to the war, but no one can really conscientiously object to animals or humans accidentally standing on mines. And so there are things that people can do anyway.
Kudos. Agreed completely.
So
Agreed.
just to finish off where we were at, we have Aussie T. Thank you so much for saying tickle the button, the like button. Thanks, JP and Greg.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. Now, I don't know, John, whether Greg will go with this because it has a rude word in it. But just to let people know that this is a bit of a slang, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek cock womble. A womble, there's a TV program that used to be on called the Wombles, and it's just a nice, interesting use of two very different words slang together, and it means it's a British slang term for a foolish or obnoxious person. You don't hear it too often. It's a bit of a niche word. I don't know that you're going to get the pastor saying that, my friend.
John Larkin, when you're dropping 20 quid on JP Pearce, MS legendary boat riding, I will tell you this. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, aka Putler. Such a cockwomble. Nothing even close to the dog's bollocks that is Jonathan Pearce.
You heard it here first.
Well, listen, if Professor Gerdes can call Marjorie Taylor Greene a camera whore,
and
then I can call Putin a cockwomble.
This is true. I fully agree with all of the above sentiments. Michael then says, draft evasion lives. Oh, no, I've already gone through that. So thank you, Michael. And we have Rick from the Netherlands. Thank you so much for that super sticker. You are a kind soul indeed. And this is T-Rex. Sorry, not Tex-Rex, slightly different. From Switzerland, one assumes. This is one for you, Greg. But guys, if young people refuse to die for whatever reason they have, their decisions should be respected. They still have their full life in front of them. Kids from politicians are already gone. Yeah, I think it is a difficult one, but at the end of the day, you know, it is also, so the flip side is that it's free riding. So if you're not going to do it, like I'm not going to risk myself, but I'm broadly in favor of Ukraine winning this war, like that's what I want, then if you're saying, but I'm not going to do it, this other person can do it for me, then the flip side of that argument is that you are just free riding on the back of that person. So yeah, it's a difficult one. There's no doubt about it.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Facebook status. Greg, before we sort of wind this bad boy down, the last thing I wanted to talk about was this, and that is the alleged plot. And I haven't done this in my news pieces. I don't know why it slipped me by, but anyway, there's been this alleged plot to assassinate Zelensky, and it is pretty alarming. So Ukraine said it's foiled a Russian plot to assassinate Zelensky. It said members of Ukraine's security service were part of the plot, and Russia appears to have gained astonishing access to Ukraine's security service. So this is on Tuesday. It said the Ukraine said they've foiled the latest attempt. The particular plot, however, appears to be more troubling. Among those allegedly involved in the planned assassinations were senior members of Ukraine's government protection service. And it suggests a larger phenomenon of extensive Russian intelligence penetration in the Ukrainian bureaucracy and military that will prove difficult to fully diagnose, let alone uproot. And I think it might have involved like getting Zelensky in a place and then bombing and then drones and then all sorts of things. I don't know. I've heard different rumors about what this plot involved. But the plot is the first time such a high-ranking official. So I think there were two colonels involved in this.
It was two colonels, and this stuff happens every day. And I mean,
and his own personal
I do not
team.
say that nonchalantly, guys. They're on both sides. There's lots of spy work and espionage and done on both sides, but this was very close. It's two colonels in his inner circle there with the SBU. I can also tell you today that the head of state security department was dismissed. His name is Sergei Rudy, and he was dismissed today. So it would have been the colonel's bosses. So Zelensky's cleaning house
on it,
and we have to look at it. Listen, this would be, if we just go off of Zelensky's numbers, before this event, I had heard him personally say, I've had 6 attempts on my life. So if we add this one, this would be 7. So it's not like this is the first time this has happened. There's been multiple attempts on the life of President Zelensky. There may have been the same against Vladimir Putin. Who knows? But for Ukraine, 7 attempts now that we know of against Zelensky, but he's cleaning house on that right now.
Yeah.
So this can be a net positive in the long run, where he's making sure that inner circle, that security circle is locked.
And I think you've had 11 attempts on Budanov or something like that, the intelligence chief.
A lot of attempts on Budanov.
Yeah, his wife was poisoned.
Yes.
And I was saying to my mate yesterday, because we were talking about this, he was like, have you heard about the Zelensky assassination? I was like, do you know what? I might have like saw something, but then it went out of my mind. And no, not really. And he was telling me about this. And I was like, it is amazing that Zelensky has been doing what he's doing in going around the world, like to so many different countries, and going to so many different areas near the front line, and going all around Ukraine as often as he does, and he is still alive. I'm amazed he's still alive with Russia's past history of assassination attempts, and successful ones at that. He honestly, his security may well be compromised now, but they've done a damn fine job of keeping that man alive.
They've done a really good job. Because there's been many times, you talk about OPSEC, he's out walking around the streets back in the early parts of the war with Boris Johnson, just wide open. It's just a fact in the daylight and clear. So yeah, we've been fortunate, and in the big picture, we take this as actually a net positive. Ukraine, he's still alive. They caught it. He's cleaning house, and security will get even better for him. Because he's an important piece of the puzzle. Before we zone out here, I do need to say I've got the message from King Dog. I got an email, and I'm not watching my chat like I'm streaming. I'm trying to really focus on Jonathan here and watch the screen I have to watch when I'm streaming with Jonathan. But it looks like somebody in my chat got kicked out for some reason. Okay, so guys that are on my chat right now, if you were in another stream on another channel and you see the real Vladimir Putin there, please message him. That was unintentional. I didn't do it. I don't know how it happened. So you guys will probably see him in another chat before I do. Please message and say, send me an email, and we'll get that taken care of. I don't like stuff like that. So thank you.
I just want to go back to the article just to read the final bit, which is some of the details. The plan, according to the SPU, was also involved persuading a mole to pass information on about the location of top Ukrainian officials, including the SBU head Vasyl Malyuk and Kirill Budanov, the head of the Ukraine's military intelligence. Quote, at the coordinates of the house where the official was supposed to be, they planned to launch a missile strike. Then they were going to attack the people who remained in the location with a drone. After that, the Russians planned to hit with another missile in order to destroy the traces of the drone, said the SBU. It's alleged that the plotters had planned to kill Budanov by Orthodox Easter, and the mission was supposed to be a gift to Russian President Putin's inauguration. It said that one of the suspects arrested had bought drones and anti-tank grenades for the mission. So, yeah, interesting. There you go. Thwarted indeed. Good word.
Thwarted.
Look, I just want to say thank you so much to all the super chatters, particularly John Larkin and John Panciotti. Super generous, and everyone really, and all of those for Greg as well.
Let me say one thing, two things actually. BME, I see your message there in my chat. I popped over to my channel real quick. Please do that. I'm asking you personally. Please message him, and please tell him to email me, because I looked into the backside. Thank you, Dr. Tuso. Sent the real Vladimir Putin a PM on Discord. Thank you. So between BME, this stuff bothers me. Okay. I'm a personal person. So BME and Dr. Tuso and Blonde Bombshell, thank you guys. Please have him email me, because I don't know his YouTube username, and whatever got blocked, I need to unblock it and let him know. We have nothing to do with it.
I'm very wary about looking into backsides. I steer away from that.
Well, I've seen your backside, and I don't want to see it again, to be quite honest. I will say this, though, guys. When we were prepping for the stream earlier today, we were setting the time and all of this jazz, and then we get into the green room about 1:45 just to have a little chat before we go live with you guys. Jonathan goes, okay, then listen, I got some things to do tonight. This could be a really short one. 2 hours later, we're still talking. You know what? You're still the dog's bollocks. You're not a cockwomble, buddy, but I love you.
Thank you, my friend, and you. Well, look, it's been a pleasure to talk to you again, and I think both of us feel a little bit in a better position with regard to where Ukraine are at the moment.
No question.
And it's all down to one, stuff getting to Ukraine and the prospect of more kit getting there, and indeed things like the $3 billion of skimmed off Russian frozen assets profits that will help to just have a sustainable amount of kit getting to Ukraine. We've got maybe $100 billion from NATO at some point. We've got the European money. We've got bilateral support from Germany in places, and we've got the American support. And they are putting together another aid package, because of course they still got quite a bit to draw from that. And so that's really good. And then you've talked a little bit, Greg, about the mobilization and how actually you're going to start seeing that really hit hard soon. So the mobilization law that's been passed, we're seeing convicts and people who are going through to legal processes. So there have been 11,000 legal processes that have been stopped because those people have volunteered to go to the front lines. That's really good. So you can get those, a bit like Russia's done, but with the Ukrainians, they're not going to send like the most violent and heinous criminals.
It is not murderers, not rapists. There's several categories there that are not getting out of prison.
Yeah,
a lot of white collar crimes, etc.
Yeah, and that to me is like eminently sensible. There's no point having them in prison and then people from the working world, be sent to the front line. It seems like that's a fair thing, and actually probably a good deal for everyone involved, and also would keep the costs of prisons down at a time when Ukraine needs every single penny it can get. So all of that makes a lot of sense. But you were saying before, and we'll leave it on this. You were saying before we went live that actually people need to watch out for this because there are going to be an awful lot of people potentially mobilized. You were talking about Zhenya saying, some of the people involved in organizations he's involved with, maybe
Zhenya told me point blank, we have 20 volunteers on our team, 16 will be mobilized. 80%. It's going to happen.
And of course,
these are not convicts, and these are not street sweepers. These are IT guys. These are business owners. These are shop owners. I mean,
which is precisely why it's taken so long for the Verkhovna Rada to do this and Zelensky to do this, because
they're going to affect their economy now.
Yeah, the ramifications of that many people being mobilized will absolutely batter the economy, and it will have a severe effect on popularity, although that's the least important aspect. But you also get a lot of people fleeing. Naturally, like have happened previously, you are going to get a lot of draft evaders. This will they need it. It's a classic dilemma. You need those people to fight the war, but you need those people to work in the economy and pay taxes. And you're going to move them often from private, working for private entities that are then paying tax to the government. And you're going to move those people from being taxpayers to being employees of the government. So it's a double whammy. Not only are you not getting their tax income, but you are paying their wages. And that's just going to cost the Ukrainian government. Like, mobilization will not come cheap in many different ways.
It will be very expensive for families, for people, for the economy. People will lose their lives. But Ukraine, it has to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And therein lies your dilemma. Look, that was a bit of a net. I was trying to be positive, but things are generally good. But that is positive, right?
It is positive
because you have been saying for an awful long time.
I have.
When are they going to mobilize? And they are mobilizing, and they are getting kit. So actually, maybe and we didn't get on to talk about what's the counteroffensive going to look like, when's it going to happen, blah blah blah. We can talk about that next time, because there's a lot of interesting conversation about, well, can they organize a counteroffensive? They don't know what Russia are going to do in the meantime, etc., etc. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, but we'll talk about that next time. But I think we should all be in a slightly better frame of mind with regard to what Russia is going to do.
I am going to stick.
Ukraine can do.
I'm going to stick with the guy I quoted 18 months ago or 20 months ago. I'm going to stick with him, and that is the president of Czech, Peter Pavel, a very experienced now politician, former general and commander of NATO, very well experienced, and he called it 18 months ago. He said, we will know where this war will go by November 2024. I completely agree with that. Completely. And it's proving to show itself. I believe that we're really going to have a clearer picture over this summer and into the fall.
Yeah. I also think they should just try and call for the International Legion again. There were plenty of people that were willing to do it before. I'd even open that up again, but I know that there's problems with that. But the more the merrier to help Ukraine.
Yeah, and we if we do this, we're going to start talking 30 more minutes, because then we get into language barriers, we get into logistics.
Let me go, Greg. I've been trying to go. You're keeping me here.
what's that word you taught me? Comwackle?
Something like that. It's like when I phone my mum, right? Or no, it's when my mum phones me, like, and she bangs on for like half an hour, like endlessly. It's like, oh no, I really must go now. She says, I really must go now. It's like, I'm not been keeping you. You phone me. This is half an hour of my time you've taken. Like, yeah, go for it. Like, no offense to my mum, but so anyway, I'm keeping you, Greg. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jonathan. And you
I'm
know,
the mother here.
You are the mother hen, and love you, buddy. Thank you.
Take care, dude, and thank you so much to all the wonderfully
and by the way, for those of
live.
you here on my channel, of course you do know, but on Johnny's channel, ATP Geopolitics, tomorrow 5 o'clock Eastern, we will be having a flag giveaway Friday. So you have to be online. I stream about an hour, do news updates, maybe have a guest, maybe not, and then boom, we'll spin the wheel, and somebody will have won a battle flag from the front, signed, autographed, picture drawn, everything. So if you're free and you want a shot to win that, be there tomorrow night. Thanks.
Do it.
All right, buddy.
Okay, bud. Take care, and take care, everyone else.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, buddy. Bye.